In the vast, unforgiving deserts of Rajasthan, India, there exists an ancient and mysterious profession known as the Rudalis, professional mourners hired to weep at funerals, to express grief that families cannot or will not show. Our story centers on Bavri, a woman in her late 40s, weathered by the desert sun, but sharp as a blade. She wasn't just any Rudali. She was the chief of her village, respected and feared in equal measure. For 30 years she had mourned at countless funerals, and in that time she had developed an unusual gift. She could sense when death carried something unnatural. That particular night felt different from the beginning. The silence of the desert was oppressive, almost suffocating. The cold wind that swept across the sand dunes didn't just chill the body, it seemed to reach into the soul itself. Bavri pulled her dark red shawl tighter around her shoulders, her calloused hands gripping the handle of an old brass lantern. The flame inside flickered wildly, as if trying to escape. She had been summoned to the mansion of Set Hiraman, one of the wealthiest landowners in the region. His younger brother, Motilal, had died suddenly, and they needed mourners for the funeral rites. But as Bavri walked through the thorny bushes and rocky paths, her instinct screamed at her to turn back. The sounds of the night were all wrong. The usual chirping of crickets was absent. Even the jackals that normally howled in the distance were silent. It was as if every living creature had fled from something terrible. Bavri paused and touched the protective amulet tied around her wrist, a black thread with ancient symbols given to her by a wandering monk years ago. She whispered a prayer under her breath and continued forward. In the distance, Set Hiraman's mansion came into view. Unlike the darkness surrounding it, the house was ablaze with lights. Oil lamps burned in every window. Torches lined the courtyard. From far away, it looked almost festive. But Bavri knew better. As she approached the main gate, her pace slowed. Every fiber of her being told her that this was no ordinary death. The air around the mansion felt heavy, almost thick, as if invisible hands were pressing down on her chest. A servant opened the gate and gestured for her to enter quickly. "Hurry, Bavri! Set Hiraman is waiting." She stepped inside. Chapter 2. The Refusal. The interior of the mansion was grand but suffocating. Chapter 3. The Dark Truth. Hiraman led Bavri to a private room away from the main hall. His wife brought them tea, but neither touched the cups. The weight of what needed to be said hung in the air. "My brother Motilal," Hiraman began slowly, "was not a good man. I loved him because he was my blood, but I won't lie to you, he caused great suffering." Bavri listened intently. "Motilal was a moneylender, like me, but where I have some mercy, some humanity, he had none. He lent money at crushing interest rates, and when people couldn't pay, he would seize everything they owned, their land, their homes, even their animals. He destroyed families without a second thought." Hiraman paused, his hands trembling slightly. But his cruelty went beyond just business. Motilal was obsessed with the occult, with dark tantric practices. He visited tantric priests in secret, performed strange rituals at night. He believed these dark powers would protect his wealth and give him control over others. "And did they?" Bavri asked. "For a time, yes. His business flourished. His enemies would fall ill mysteriously. People feared him. But dark powers always demand payment." "What payment?" Hiraman stood and walked to the window, staring out at the darkness. 10 years ago, a man named Baga came to Motilal for help. Baga was a simple farmer, honest and hard-working. His son had fallen gravely ill and needed expensive treatment in the city. Baga had no money, so he came to Motilal and borrowed a large sum. Bavri could already sense where this story was heading. Baga's son needed months of treatment. The money ran out. Baga tried to borrow more, tried to explain, begged for time. But Motilal, he showed no mercy. He gave Baga 1 month to repay everything, the principal plus interest that had compounded to 3 times the original amount. Baga couldn't pay, could he? No. So Motilal took everything. The farm that had been in Baga's family for 4 generations, his small house, his cattle, everything. Baga and his sick son were left with nothing. They became beggars overnight. Hiraman's voice became hollow. Baga's son died 3 days later. He died in the street, in his father's arms, because Baga couldn't afford even basic medicine. Motilal's men dragged Baga away from his son's body when he couldn't pay for a proper funeral. Bavri felt a chill run down her spine. Baga turned mad with grief, but his madness was cold, calculating. He swore revenge, and he took it. What did he do? He killed Motilal's 2 sons, the elder, who was 15, and the younger, who was only 10 years old. He poisoned them both and made Motilal watch them die, just as Motilal's men had made Baga watch his own son die. The room fell silent except for the sound of wind howling outside. Chapter 4. The First Victim. Bavri left Hiraman's mansion that night with a heavy heart. She gathered all the Rudalis from her village and told them firmly, no one is to mourn at Motilal's funeral, no matter how much money they offer, no matter what threats they make. This is not negotiable. Most of the women trusted Bavri and agreed immediately, but greed is a powerful force. Vimla was a younger Rudali, ambitious and always hungry for more money. She had 3 children to feed and a husband who gambled away whatever little they had. When Hiraman's servant approached her secretly that night with a bag of silver coins, more money than she'd make in 6 months, her resolve weakened. "Just 1 night," the servant whispered, "just a few hours of mourning. Said Hiraman will pay triple your usual rate. No one needs to know." Vimla hesitated. She thought of her children's hungry faces, of the debts piling up. "I won't go alone," she finally said. "I'll take 2 others with me." "Fine, but Bavri must not know." That night, Vimla convinced 2 other desperate Rudalis, Naina and Gena, to join her. They crept out of the village after midnight, wrapped in dark shawls, and made their way to Hiraman's mansion. The funeral ceremony had been prepared. Motilal's body lay on a platform, covered in white cloth and flowers. The room smelled of incense, but underneath it was another smell, something rotten, something wrong. Vimla, Naina, and Gena began their mourning ritual. They sat around the body and started the traditional wailing, beating their chests, crying out to the heavens. At first, nothing happened. But as their tears began to flow more freely, as their cries grew louder, the temperature in the room dropped sharply. Their breath became visible in the cold air. The oil lamps began to flicker wildly. And then they heard it. Footsteps. Heavy, dragging footsteps. But there was no one else in the room. Vimla stopped crying, her heart pounding. "Did you hear that?" Before anyone could answer, the white cloth covering Motilal's body moved, not from wind, not from any natural cause. It moved as if something underneath was shifting, awakening. "We need to leave," Naina whispered, her voice shaking. "Now!" They stood to run, but the doors slammed shut on their own. The windows banged shut. They were trapped. The cloth covering the body fell away, and what lay beneath was no longer Motilal's corpse. It was